A new hope for women who want to wait to have kids until later in life. A study finds that freezing eggs is more successful than in vitro fertilization. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Erin LeBeau.
And I'm Tamsin Fidel. The study done at NYU Langone Fertility Center found that women who thawed more than 20 mature eggs had a 58% birth rate success, even when women were past their reproductive prime. So joining us now to talk more about this is Dr. James Griffo, the director of NYU Langone Fertility Center. Doctor, thanks so much for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
So let's dive in and talk about the study results and why this is such a good thing.
Well, it's an important thing because women are having their babies older, and because of that, it's harder to get pregnant. It's harder to stay pregnant. You miscarry more, and you have babies with more problems. And so for a woman whose career path is that she wants to have her children later, having eggs in the freezer gives her more freedom and optionality and also success. Mm-hmm. And that's what we showed in this study, which is a culmination of about 30 years of research. So it's a really good thing. Women under the age of 38 who had 20 or more eggs, actually 70% of those patients had babies. So freezing eggs younger gives a better outcome than if you need assisted reproduction when you're older, and more women do.
You mentioned it briefly, or you touched on it briefly there, saying that more women are waiting to have children at a later age. Are there any other reasons that women are choosing to freeze their eggs that you're finding?
Well, it's mainly for delayed childbearing, but we certainly have a lot of cancer patients who are going to get chemotherapy, and that's going to harm their eggs. So we freeze them before they get their chemotherapy. So when they're cured of their disease, they can have a family, which they wouldn't have had otherwise. So that's one particular reason. The main issue is that in 1984, the average age of first birth was 19, and now it's 30. Wow. And in New York City, it's probably late 30s. And it's really hard to get pregnant on your own at that age for many patients. And having eggs in the freezer, knowing you're delaying, will allow you to have families. The women in this study who froze their eggs, some of them had their whole family from their frozen eggs, which they wouldn't have had because by the time they were ready to have a child, they were past the time when they would be successful.
So let me ask you this. You mentioned the average age of women who froze their eggs was 38 years old. Do you find that as a typical age? And is there if it is or isn't, is there a good age bracket for women to freeze eggs?
Yeah, that's a great question. The older you are when you freeze your eggs, the less likely it is to work. So ideally, you want to do it young enough, but not if you don't need them. If you freeze too young and you don't need them, then you don't necessarily have to have frozen those eggs. Right. But women are having their babies, first baby 38, 39, 40. Some of these women had their second baby from their frozen eggs. The ideal age is somewhere probably under 35, and that's what we're seeing now. In this study, women were older doing this because it was newer. Now that it's more successful and now that people are finding out about it, our average age patient is freezing at 34, and we've actually seen 30%, 50% increase in egg freezing over the last few years, and the pandemic certainly accelerated that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure a lot of the older women too, 34 and older, are able to afford it at that point. We'll touch on that a little bit later, but first, the first baby was born through egg freezing at NYU Langone's Fertility Center back in 2005. Has anything really changed in the process over these last 2 decades?
Yeah, we've gotten better. We've made the techniques better. We've gotten better thaw results. And now we have a lot more data. And that's the other thing with this study is there really wasn't a large data set for women to look and get an idea of what their chances would be. This is the largest published number of babies born from elective cryopreservation of eggs, egg freezing, and for delayed childbearing, so that women can use this data to get a better sense of what their chances are. Previously, there were these mathematical models, which now all turn out to be wrong because they're based on assumptions. This is actual data, and no one's published that. So we have just published the largest data set to help our patients.
So is there a different success rate between eggs that are frozen before or after fertilization?
So freezing eggs and embryos, we get the same baby rate. It's about finding the one embryo that's going to make the baby. So, you know, if a woman's single and wants to preserve her fertility, freezing eggs makes sense because then she can delay deciding what sperm to use. And often, you know, young single women plan to have a partner and want to use that sperm. It used to be thought that embryos were better, but they're not in our hands. It depends on the lab, though, so that's really important.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's talk about the price, because according to the NYU Langone Fertility Center's website, egg cryopreservation rates start at about $9,200, and most patients, their insurance doesn't cover this. Why is the cost so expensive, and is there help for people who may not have it?
So that's a great question, and it is a problem, but it's being solved by insurance, because now what's happening is if I'm an employer and I want to get top talent women, I'm going to give them benefits. And so now more and more women are getting benefits for egg freezing because, employers are asking women to work during their most fertile years and delay getting pregnant. Giving them those benefits makes that a very attractive job. So that's one big piece of it. It's very expensive, of course. There are hundreds of people who work with us. There's a lab that has to be run 24/7. There's reagents, equipment. It costs a lot to do. So that's a big part of the cost. But it's priceless too, because being able to have a baby. I mean, some of these women in this study would not have a family had they not frozen their eggs, because they would have tried too late, and that's sad. And it's really important for the future, because the average age of first birth is continuing to rise, and it's going to be a population issue at some point. I don't know when, probably not in our lifetime, but not far off if the trend continues. So we have to have solutions that nature won't solve, and this is one of them.
It'll be interesting to see what different employers, whether insurance pays for it or not, but what different employers are willing to do, as that being continually brought up as perhaps one of the benefits if an employer wants somebody to work in those years. So I guess
the good news is more women are in the boardroom, and they've had infertility, and they're hiring young women, and they're thinking, boy, if I want to get the top talent, I'm going to make sure she
you
has
make some good points. You certainly make some good points with that. All right, Dr. Griffith, thank you for the time today. We appreciate you speaking with us. I'm sure we'll have you back again.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.